Both I and Siddhartha are big believers of India's story.
My purpose in life is to see India within my lifetime as a $50 trillion economy that keeps me awake and inspires me.
We have invested in 55 companies at NAAMM. What makes you excited as an investor about Indian market and Indian founders?
India is now a capitalistic nation.
Entrepreneurs are celebrated now.
A lot of things are in India's favor. Back in 1991, all the top 1% of the youth of India, which was in colleges like IIT, they were going abroad for their masters. Now they are not going at scale. India had never had the good fortune of consistent governments throughout its history. If India can continue to grow at 8% on its GDP year on year, then India will see path toward being a developed nation by 2047, what Prime Minister Modi says.
China is almost considered a closed economy. Tell us more about that.
People don't have transparency of what is happening in China. Imagine Jack Ma is the Mukesh Ambani of China. If Chinese government can make him disappear overnight, then which citizen is safe? So why would a foreign investor want to invest in a country where they're seeing, stability disappear over a period of time?
Hi everyone, welcome to the NAAMM show. I'm your host Nansi with your OG host Siddhartha, and today we are going to discuss a very interesting topic. And we were told that India is 15-20 years behind China and 20-30 years behind US, and India is now world's fifth largest economy, and by 2027 it is expected that we are going to become world's third largest economy, and we are living in a very exciting time. And both I and Siddhartha are big believers of India's story, and we are very excited to see what's coming in the next few years for us as country. So today we are going to discuss what has happened in the last decade in India, and what are the trendsetter things that has happened in India, and what lies next, right? So Siddharth, we have invested in 55 companies at NAAMM. What makes you excited as an investor about Indian market and Indian founders?
So let's go back historically, right? US became a $1 trillion economy in 1969. I think the same year that they launched man on moon. Right? India became a $1 trillion economy in 2007, right? And China became a $1 trillion economy somewhere in the 90s, right? And what has happened is, like, if you see, right, India when they hit a $1 trillion economy and US when they hit a 1 trillion, there's a gap of 38 years, right? And since 2007, today in 2024, after 17 years, India is a $4 trillion economy, and it's expected in the next 10 years, India will be a $10 trillion economy, right? Today, US is around $30 trillion or more than that. China is $18 trillion. But the biggest factor that's in India's favor is India is now a capitalistic nation. Like, there's some elements of still, old socialism that we carry, but by far, right, capitalism gets rewarded, efforts gets rewarded, adventure,
Doing a business no more
doing
a
a
bad
business
thing.
gets rewarded in India.
Entrepreneurs are celebrated now.
And what has happened in the US, it was for the last 200 years, this was getting rewarded. And if you see India's 1947 till 1991, India was a socialist nation for 44 years. To give you an example, what happens when socialism becomes the norm? The right part of Germany, East Germany, got captured by Russia, and it became a socialist state. So you can imagine there was just the Berlin Wall between the two parts of Germany, West and East. The West prospered because it was guided by the US, and the right was a socialist. And people were getting shot whenever they want to cross from East Germany to West Germany when crossing the Berlin Wall. And in 1991, the Berlin Wall got destroyed. But it was not even a border; it was just a wall. If you see, both these sides have very different set of citizens. One who were capitalistic in nature, one who were socialist in nature. And over a period of time, why Germany became, the fourth or the fifth largest economy globally is because it became a capitalistic nation. It favored capitalism, it favored efforts, it favored creation of new enterprise, right? So India was grappling with socialism for the first 44 years of independence, and only once we were forced in 1991 because of the the fiscal deficit, that we had to open our economy and start our path towards capitalism, start our path to rewarding enterprise, right? I think India woke up in 1991. In the last 34 years, what we have seen is, right, you can imagine the first 16 years, 1991 to 2007, it just took stabilizing the economy, creating new enterprise, right, making sure we do away with the old policies, right, and so it created the first $1 trillion economy in India. But from 2007, since we had a momentum till 2024, in spite of all 2G scams, coal scams, India has been able to maintain the momentum and grow to a $4 trillion economy. Now, a lot of things are in India's favor. India has the highest amount of youth globally, the largest population, but the highest amount of youth, right? Which means that if this youth is directed and if youth is ambitious enough at scale, they'll start setting up their own enterprises within India. And what is the other thing in favor of India? Back in 1991, all the top 1% of the youth of India, which was let's say in colleges like IIT, they were going abroad for their masters. Now they are not going at scale; they're staying back in India. And you have to remember Pareto's principle at play, where top 1% of the population will produce 80% of the wealth. Now these guys were creating wealth for the US. These are people like Vinod Khosla, Sundar Pichai, Satya Nadella. Now the new Satya Nadellas like Bini Bansal, Sachin Bansal, they're staying back in India. Mukesh Bansal, yeah, right? So India now has tremendous amount of these new young millionaires and billionaires staying back, creating wealth for their country, paying taxes for their country. That is the biggest thing, I think, why I am so bullish on India and why I think, right, as the theme of this podcast is, can India become a $50 trillion economy?
So, what do you think makes these Indians ambitious?
So the first is previously, what is ambition? Let's think that ambition is, let's say, for many people, they want to become financially free, right? That's one kind of ambition, and that's one of the largest kind of ambition that has ever existed in a capitalistic world, right? In US, there's supposed that there are around 10 million, $1 million people, uh, right? And in India, this population is in thousands right now. Those who have net worth beyond $1 million. So this the last 2 decades are the first few decades in the first 75 years of independence that we have seen the highest number of self-made millionaires come up in India. And because of this, right, earlier, the youth would say that business is bad, and youth were trained, right, if you see in your households, that if you're a businessman you must be doing something wrong. That was the mentality in the 1980s movie and what our parents used to say. But today that perspective is completely changed. Like if you have your own business, uh, you have more respect because the kind of risk and the effort that you are taking. So first time in the country, rather than just the outcome, uh, people are recognizing the risk and the effort of an individual when they take an adventure like a business.
So, earlier we didn't have enough examples.
We have
But
now, like,
we have so many examples now.
for the longest point in time, we used to quote Dhirubhai Ambani for a self-made man.
Yeah.
Now, at least India, if not of the Reliance scale, at least has 1,000 Dhirubhai Ambanis of 50 years ago.
Yeah.
What Dhirubhai Ambani achieved 50 years ago. So this is a huge testament for youth to look up to, that they can have the best of their life and they can stay in India and they can be financially independent. And what are the most positive outlet for energy is to create. So these are you that are able to create new products, new businesses.
And who are these individuals who are really inspiring India?
I think most of these folks, if you see, right, because India's tier one population, anyways, has been well established. Like if you consider the cream of the tier one population across Delhi, Bangalore, Mumbai, right, the still 90% is struggling. But most of the India's new millionaires among the youth, they have come from tier two towns. So again, coming back to the example of Sachin Bansal, Bini Bansal, Mukesh Bansal, these folks are all from tier two towns of India. If you consider folks from Bihar, they're establishing business like
Yeah.
Dheeraj Pandey of Utanics.
Yes. And I think now, like, there's this new perspective that is being developed that there are people who don't see IITians as good examples, but I think IITs have played a massive role, you know, bringing these tier two city talent, you know, into the mainstream, and then these people are like have played an important role shaping the Indian startup ecosystem.
Yeah, I think education has played a major role in the development of India. That's why education till now has been considered for a poor family the only stone or stepping ladder to come out of poverty. If one of the kids in a very poor family, living in a you know a broken home without any facilities, goes to IIT, they have a real shot at making out of poverty. We always talk about uh, now the Nvidia, Apple, Alphabet, Microsoft, and Meta is called NAAMM of the US, right?
Yeah.
And these are the companies which have the highest market cap in the US, and they are all tech companies. At one point of time, they are all startups, right? So that is the power of tech. That the top five companies by market capitalization in the US, and let's say if US GDP is $38 trillion, out of that, $10 trillion is because of these companies. So India needs its own NAM, and that NAM can be Zomato, Flipkart, Paytm, of the likes, right? So I'm most excited about these companies like Zomato, Flipkart, Paytm, and more of the companies that have Swiggy, uh, Zepto to reach $100 billion valuation mark in India on public markets.
Okay.
Once we reach that, we'll see like sky is the ambition for the youth,
Hmm.
and they will believe that they can also, like the US, build $100 billion companies sitting out of India.
Yeah. And like since you have mentioned about Nvidia, can you tell us more about Nvidia? Like Nvidia is in news for all the great reasons, like how that company reached to the level that it is.
I think the founder of Nvidia kept on building for 30 years, and he was building the hardware, the chips on which processing for AI runs. And now, once 5 6 years ago, the world was ready in terms of application layer like ChatGPT, OpenAI, for AI. They were the picks and shovels for the AI business, right? All the AI business is getting built on top of Nvidia because AI runs on Nvidia. That's why Nvidia today became the largest company by market cap globally.
Very interesting. And so that like we also talked about this in our podcast with Pranay that China is ahead of India, and there are things we can learn from India, from China as country. Can you tell us more about that? Like, what is China doing that India can also start working on? Like, what India can learn from China?
I think the biggest evil that India adopted ever was socialism. If you study the history, right, let's go back. US was from the beginning a capitalist country. So capitalist means that uh, those who are in favor of progress and those who make progress will get rewarded the highest. Socialism means no matter how much hard work you do, it will be equally divided among all the people. So Russia was a socialist. USSR, former USSR, was a Soviet Union, as we call it,
Hmm.
was a socialist nation, and US was a capitalist nation. Both attained, both were victorious after World War II. But Russia kept its socialist agenda, and US kept its capitalist agenda. Let's imagine Germany, which was captured after World War II. Half of the Germany was divided, which is West Germany by the US and Britain and France, and half Germany was taken by Russia. And the part of the half of Germany was socialist, half of Germany was capitalist. When the Berlin Wall broke down in 1991, almost like 46 years after World War II, this side of Germany, the side which was had the support of US, had flourished, had a completely different lifestyle, right? And this other part, you can imagine a single wall in between. There's
Yeah.
no boundary.
Yeah.
Were extremely poor, and people were shot by Russian army or the East German army for crossing from East Germany to West Germany, because that shows a tendency of people to jump from socialism to capitalism for the sake of progress to make a better life. The similar thing happened in India. For the first, I think till 1991, 44 years of independence, uh, India was a socialist country. Every public sector, every undertaking was controlled by the government, and government said that it's our responsibility to make sure that we can provide living for the mass population of India, and all undertakings, be it manufacturing, banking, should be under government. And India was in a huge foreign deficit. We have shown in a previous podcast with Sanjeev Sanyal and so many other policy making podcasts that India was forced to adopt,
Hmm.
to open doors and be to move towards capitalism. It didn't become a capitalist nation overnight, but right now we're on a road to becoming a capitalist nation. We have progressed very far. So what has happened in the last 33 years? The DNA of India has changed,
Hmm.
right, from a socialist country to a capitalist country. I think that is one of the most exciting things to have happened in India. Uh, uh, Without which we would still be a very poor nation if we were still a socialist.
So we have talked about all the good things that are going to help India become the third largest economy in the world. That we have, we're living in Amrit Kal, right?
Yeah.
We have world's youngest population living in India, right? Um, what are the challenges India is facing? Like,
I think why your previous question also was why what can India learn from China? China had a single party rule, which is Maoist rule. It was like a capitalism form of communism, right? With a single party rule for largest period of time, let's assume let's say 40 years. And what it enforced as a single party rule is the policies which were set right by that party, that same policies continued for 40 years and made China a developed nation, right? So it had a large streak of compounding in good policy making, and those stayed consistent. India had never had the good fortune of consistent governments throughout its history. The governments have come and gone. Only the last 10 years with the current Prime Minister Modi's government has been a stable government. Like previously, if you see 8 years of UPI government, the first 4 years were very good, and the last 4 years were completely shadowed with scams, coal scam, 2G scam, so many scams, right? So India never had a large streak of 30, 40 years of prosperity where it can compound. What do I mean by that is if India can continue to grow at 8% on its GDP year on year and can keep on, creating wealth, there's a path for citizens to create wealth for themselves, either by building companies or being employees, then India will see, a path towards being a developed nation by 2047, what Prime Minister Modi says. But I think this has been the biggest crippler for the Indian economy. Can we have a stable government for a very long period of time, which can ensure that rather than popular votes, they can do what is right for the country?
if we talked about China, that China has been ruled by a single party, right? But it has its disadvantages also, that China is almost considered a closed economy, right?
Yeah.
People would prefer to invest in India over China. So, what do you like? Tell us more about that.
So, for the last 20 years, people who invested in China made like 10x of their money because all this ecosystem of Alibaba, ByteDance, uh, electric vehicles, manufacturing was getting created in China. What has happened now is people don't have transparency of what is happening in China. When the biggest, you imagine Jack Ma is the Mukesh Ambani of China. If Chinese government can make him disappear overnight, then which citizen is safe? Any citizen expresses dissent against the Chinese government, their life is in danger, right? So why would a foreign investor want to invest in a country where they're seeing, ability disappear over a period of time? Like industries will not get created by themselves, right? You need people like Jack Ma who created China, and if you are making sure that people like Jack Ma are not able to perform at their best because there's a the government is fearing that Jack Ma can do something against China, right? If you're fearful of your best citizens that's creating China, then that why would an investor bet on that country? Whereas an investor would bet on India, where we are seeing it's an open playground. Yes, India has tough time in policy making, tough time in governance, it's tough time to set up a business here, tough time to run a business here. But these things are easing over a period of time, and people see India as an open economy. So that's why people are fear. People want to invest in a smaller economy which is open, which is growing, as compared to a large economy which is closed and it's like a black box. People don't know what is happening, and especially how China handled COVID destroyed its reputation.
Hmm. And how are these foreign investors seeing Indian market, like in terms of exits that we are now seeing? Earlier, it was said that we don't have Indian market doesn't have exits. Like,
So what happened in 2016 is Flipkart got acquired for $17 billion by Walmart, and it was said to be the largest exit. And after that, for 4 5 years, we didn't have exit. But now, what has happened in the last 3 4 years? We are constantly seeing at least 10 to 15 startup IPOs every year. This year, Mamaearth went IPO, right? Companies like Idea Forge, which produce drones, went IPO. Companies like Swiggy have filed to go IPO. Ola Electric has filed to go IPO. Zomato went IPO last year and very successful IPO. Paytm went IPO. It was not a favorable one for them, but still the company continues to exist. And so these have shown that India has produced now 50s of exit through startups for public market and private investors. Uh, Now the question is, foreign investors are betting on India, thinking that these 50 will grow to 1,000. So can India still continue its momentum of uh, the the lively IPO market that we have today? In the past 3 4 months, we were seeing one IPO every 2 weeks. On some weeks, it was like one startup IPO
in a week,
every week.
every
Like
week.
Exico went IPO, and before that, there were a couple of more IPOs. So if we continue this trend, then foreign investors would keep on betting more in India, because the US IPO markets are closed, and globally there's no robust IPO market as robust as India. And the good thing is that Indian regulators like SEBI and RBI, they protect the retail investors. So they make sure that and they're able to avoid at least 90% of the fraudulent companies to go IPO, whereas in US it's not possible.
But like, thanks to these regulators, we have too many regulations also
Yeah, I
that
think
like,
they'll go away. And the best part right now is these regulators are active. They're not sleeping, and they're active in policy making. They are very very active right now. They are active to change their old policies. They are listening to the market. That's why we could see Zomato and Paytm IPO when they were even unprofitable.
yeah. But
Earlier, unprofitable company couldn't go IPO in India, but now they are starting to go.
so as we are also experiencing, and we see people saying this, that it's really difficult to start a company in India, it's really difficult to build a company in India, and there are too many regulations. Government support is not enough, and like recently we have this new regulation that founders who are raising money from global investors, the government will apply tax on that money also, irrespective of the fact that that money is not even income, right? And then we are seeing these Indian people moving back to India and choosing to build from India and for the world. Like, what's truly happening here?
So see, uh, uh, regulators are risk averse in India. That's why you see less number of frauds as other countries in India. There are some, but they're not as large as what happened in the US. Like, uh, so regulators are constantly monitoring the market, and obviously the policy change is slow, but it is there, right? So all these things that you negative talked about, they're negative. I think over a large period of time they will go away. With a large country like India, regulators also understand, the government also understand, they it's better to build a free economy and build systems that people can govern themselves, companies can govern themselves, rather than regulating companies, if the country has to prosper. In such a large country like India, can't prosper by government interference. We tried to do that from 1947 to 1991. It didn't work. The government has learned its lessons. I think it will not happen in 5 years, 10 years, but it'll keep on happening slowly, steadily, and reforms will keep on compounding over a period of time. You should not expect any drastic changes and any major ease of doing business in 5 years, but I say over decades it will keep on easing out.
You mentioned about the policies that we like, because of these regulators we now have better policies or new policies. So what are these policies that you think that founders are like, they're really helping founders to build the business
So, for example,
in a better way?
when you open a company account, current account, I think you really don't have to travel to a bank. The bank as a will come to your place. Earlier, to open a current account, it took 3 to 4 months, and now you have created two companies. No, like the first one took maybe 1 month, the second
Yeah.
one took 5 days,
Yes.
right? So this is a drastic shift in how policies are impacting the creation of companies, right? Second is opening up a current bank account, uh, right? The process has become so much easier for, right? They'll come to your office, and within the next 2 days they'll open. Earlier it used to take 1 or 2 months. And on opening personal accounts, it happens completely digitally. The
Yeah.
KYC happens completely digitally. So these are the things on policy making that have happened in India. The other thing is that earlier, for an IPO, it was almost impossible for a startup to go IPO because only large companies would go IPO in India. But today, a startup is able to go IPO with 1 or 2 years of preparation. Uh, right, and I think this will ease down over a course of time. This is the policy changes that the government has brought. Earlier, unprofitable companies couldn't go IPO. Now, unprofitable companies can go IPO in India.
Can you tell us more about that? Like, how does an unprofitable company goes to
So, for
IPO?
example, when Zomato filed for its IPO, it was still unprofitable, and it showed a path that within 3 to 4 years they will become profitable. As of today, they have become profitable, and earlier investors hammered them when they went IPO at 10 billion valuation, and the valuation in public market came down to 5 billion. Today, the company is valued at 20 billion. Right? So even the public markets are celebrating risk taking. When Zomato acquired Blinkit, the share went down. Uh, almost the company valuation went down to $4 billion. Today, they say the Blinkit occupies more than $10 billion in Zomato's valuation of 20 billion. So the public market investors are appreciating risk taking, and they are rewarding you by the increase in share price. And the government is supporting that kind of risk taking.
And there are so many interesting companies that are going IPO, and people like, they were not that celebrated. People didn't know them, but like one such example is Go Colors. Can you tell us more companies like that? That
Yeah, I think more retail companies like GoColors, Mamaearth, which have traditionally been PE backed, uh, you know, small NBFCs, non-banking financial institutions, they have going public in India. I think it's a great path for entrepreneurs, their team, to create liquid wealth for themselves and show a path to financial retirement like very early on in their life.
and there is one set of entrepreneurs who are, shifting their base from India to US, right? And then there is this different set of entrepreneurs who are shifting their base from US uh, or maybe Singapore to India. Like, what are these people thinking? Like, what's the thought
I
process?
think
Can you
entrepreneurs
elaborate?
who used to go to the US were going because their customers were there or they were incubated by accelerators like Y Combinator. Now, entrepreneurs from these countries, Indian entrepreneurs, are coming back and which is called reverse flipping, making India back their headquarters is because their domestic market consumption is in India. For example, Razorpay, Meesho, Pine Labs, they are all reverse flipping from their US or Singapore entities back to India.
How does this actually work? Like, when they started, they knew that they're going to serve the
No,
Indian.
back then when they started 10 years ago, the Indian markets were public markets were not there, as vibrant as they are today. There was no path for these companies to go public. And because the regulations are easy in US, that became the easiest choice for these companies to incorporate in the US.
And how do you see that for SaaS companies? Like the companies that are flipping back are mostly consumer companies.
Yeah, I
So
think
how do you see that for SaaS companies?
yet to be proven, but let's see over a period of time, do SaaS companies reverse flip to India or not? Uh, is yet to be proven at a scale. Consumer companies, yes, because the domestic consumption for Misho is in India. Retail investors know Misho, so India, when they IPO in India, they'll get much favored uh, brand recall.
And we have talked about like how we have reached almost 4 trillion, right? So what do you think will take us from almost 4 to 10? Like what are the shift we'll be seeing in the next coming
I
years?
think more disposable income you will see from $4 to $10 trillion among the middle class and lower middle class in India. You will see more and more uh, foreign brands coming to India. You will see better quality of roads, transportation, more amount of public transportation, like trams, more metros come up in India, more number of airports. So I think yeah, quality of life is going to increase by a
So
lot.
whenever we talk about quality of life, whenever we talk about elites returning to India, kind of topics we explore, uh, in the comment section, we see people sharing that we just talk about the 1% of India. What's the other, like rest of the people, what they are doing, like what policies are there for them? Uh, are we just talking about the 1%?
No, I think uh, I'll take an example. There are currently more than 2 million delivery boys in India across platforms like Swiggy, Zomato, Blinkit, Zepto, Big Basket. 20 lakh delivery boys or girls. Now, these each are able to earn an income of 20,000 to 30,000 rupees per month, working 8 to 12 hours per day. And most of them have come from villages, tier 3 towns of India. Uh, 10 years ago, this opportunity was not there. Right? So you can imagine the quality of life of these people are changing. And now, once these people come to cities, they are able to educate their kids, and their next generation would have opportunity which is better than what they have.
But still, for upper middle class, the monthly income is around 25,000. So, like, how this is going to change?
I think it's changing. I think this income have improved. It's not 25,000 for a family now. For a middle class, I think if both partners are earning, that income is between 80 to 1,000 to 1 lakh rupees per month.
But are we still talking about 1% where both the partners are earning?
Yeah, but I think this is a trend which is changing in India where both the partners are working. 30 years ago, it was not the case. It was only the family dependent on one member.
Okay. And so that, like, at Neon, we have now invested in 55
Yeah.
plus companies, right? We are meeting so many new founders every week. So, how do you, like, if a founder comes to you to pitch for their startup, how do you structurally think about investing in them, and how do you align your investing thought process with this India opportunity?
I think India has the largest developer base, and India has the largest export of IT services globally among all the countries. $200 billion of IT exports by companies like Wipro, TCS, Infosys, and hundreds of other IT services companies. So what has happened, because there's a developer base, and for the developer base, which is right now let's say 3 million developers, serving in most of them serving in these IT companies, they're shifting to product companies. And India is the first time seeing the creation of go-to-market talent at scale, like where you can sit in India and sell globally, or you can have hybrid teams, one in India, one in the US, and selling to global customers. So this is happening at scale. So that's the biggest opportunity right now. And I believe the kind of revolution India saw in IT services, we'll see like a $200 billion of opportunity in software products created for B2B companies. Uh, that will happen in India, like from India.
Yeah, I think we had a very interesting discussion today. So thank you so much for joining us today, and thank you, Siddharth. You have severe cold, still you are recording with
No,
me.
I'm
So
passionate about India, and my purpose in life is to see India within my lifetime as a $50 trillion economy. So that keeps me awake and inspires me.
thank you, and we'll be recording more such interesting internal episodes, and we'll be sharing them on our channel. So please feel free to share your suggestions in the comment section, and your honest feedback has always helped us. So we'll just try to improve, and we'll bring more such insightful discussions to you every week. So thank you so much for your support, and stay tuned for the new episodes coming every week.